Welcome to Real Talk. We are here, season 3, and we have a very special guest with us, Carlos Torro from the Hartford area office, has so graciously agreed to come and speak with Lanisa and I about the importance of men and health and wellness. And so without further ado, I just want to thank Lanisa again for partnering with me to put this season forward. I think we're on a good stretch in terms of the topics that we've been covering. And this one is definitely something that needs to be brought to light. So Carlos, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. Can you talk to us a little bit about your background?
Sure. And thank you for having me. My background that brings me here is pretty in depth. I was a youth in care when I was a kid. So I grew up as a youth in the system, which has its own trauma in and of itself. And as I grew up in foster care, I ended up going to college. I got my degree. I got married, was married for 18 years, then got a divorce. Been at this job for 22 years, and a lot of what we work on every day in terms of getting the job done goes unseen, and a lot of what we do is all production, and a lot of what we don't get to talk about what happens in our personal lives. And that's everyone, for example, but I think men in particular don't necessarily open up about what goes on in their life. So what brings me here is, one, that I'm a man. 2, I got stuff I could talk about and things I've been through. And I think as far as men are concerned, we're all in that same boat, looking for a safe place to share.
What I appreciate, Carlos, so much about you is that your deep care about wellness for yourself, but wellness for men, to have a platform that allows voices to be heard. But I believe even in that realm, someone has to take the lead. And that's what you've done. And as we've connected, and your heart to be able to say, you know what, I'm willing and want to go deeper. And we all do. Because to your point, we all carry both work stress and personal. And that is for every single one of us. And so the fact that you have the heart to want to give voice to men in general, because I feel like that is a group that sometimes does get overlooked, or not enough light, perhaps, as we continue to lift it up. I know there's incredible work of fatherhood being done, and but when we talk about wellness, that is a whole different area of opportunity. So I thank you for stepping in and leaning in.
Yeah, no problem. And again, thank you, because I feel like this is a safe place to talk about it. And more recently, like last year, Twitch, if anyone remembers who Twitch is, he was a dancer. He took his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I look out into the world and I see people who look positive, who seem like they're doing what they need to do to keep themselves healthy, he was one person that I, kind of looked to in terms of his energy. And when I seen that he had taken his own life, I was perplexed. And then after that, this year, early in the year, a good buddy of mine took his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it just made me start thinking even more about, I don't want any more of my boys to feel like they don't have someone that they could talk to, and then that be the last resort, to make that be the decision to handle one's problems. That's the worst of it. But in between all of that, there's a lot of opportunity, to get some things off your proverbial chest.
That's exactly right. Tracy, I love how you spoke about, the idea of, from the outside, how men may push off medical needs even, to start there. And I may ask you maybe to lead in a little bit into that, because you brought up a great point about maybe the resistance that may come in that. If I could have you maybe lift that up a little bit, would be great.
Sure, Lanisa. When we think about healthcare and men just going to the doctor for a checkup or following what I'll call doctor's orders, I know from, unfortunately, personal experience how fear at times sets in, and they're afraid at times to go because they don't want to hear what the doctor has to say, or not very trusting of the information that the doctor is providing them. It causes them to kind of step back and hold off on taking care of themselves, and then months go by and you might find them on a path that has some serious ramifications. And so, Carlos, I don't know what your thought or experience is around that, but what is your perspective?
I think men as a whole, what we've been called to provide to the world is protection, provision, safety, and security. So with that mantle being carried through the world of protection, provision, safety, and security, we've been, I believe, socialized culturally to be strong. You have to be strong. You got to protect, you got to provide safety and security. So in any moment, like an athlete, if you feel like you can't get on the field because you're hurt, you might not tell a coach because you won't be able to provide to your team. So you may go out and play injured. And I think that's what men end up doing. And it's hard for a man to say this hurts or that hurts, because then you might feel like you're being looked at like you're weak, or you might need some help. And unfortunately, that's just how we've been cultured, to believe that, you can just handle your stuff. You got to take care of it yourself. So that's the stuff that you can see. Like if you can see me limping and I don't want help, family members might be upset about that. Or if I have cancer and I'm still smoking cigarettes or whatever it is that's going on. And that's the stuff that you can see. And so I think that's important, because most men don't even take care of the needs that other people could see. So imagine what's going on underneath all of that. So imagine the needs that men have that are not being seen, that men aren't articulating that they have, that are more of an emotional or mental health-related issue.
So there's still a large stigma attached to men asking for help or seeking assistance. Do you still think that there's a stigma attached to it?
I do. And I think that's why men have to find each other and stick together. Because women and children are entitled to protection. Those children are made up of boys and girls. Eventually, those boys turn into men, and they have to provide women and children protection. So who's protecting those men when they go from boys to men? And so that's where sort of like the lions and the pride, I kind of like to look at it. Like every lion that leaves his pride has to find another lion that leaves his pride in order to kind of connect. Otherwise, we die in isolation. And men insulate and they incubate.
I love how you talked about having men come together to support one another. I think there is such value in that, to be able to have the space, like you said, about having a safe space to be like, yo, I'm tired. It is heavy, the responsibilities. Not that it's an honor, right? Like you talk about you're right, culturally what's been placed on men. There's beauty in that, because there is a level of like protection and provision. But yet at the same time, it can carry the same weight of sometimes it's too much. And sometimes I also get tired too. So what does that look like that another man can also be able to understand that a woman cannot? And so we talk about, again, this podcast right here, again, thank you for being here, gives voice to how do we continue to lift up this opportunity to continue to have the conversations with more men, and to be able to say, what do you need? And you deserve, while we continue to lift you up as you lift us up. Just wanted to lift that up as well.
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking, I started to think about a work day where someone is super stressed. You got so much to do. I've seen so many women, I would say, feel safe to just cry at their desk. I haven't seen one man cry at his desk about being overwhelmed. And I'm not saying that he's not, saying he won't.
Yeah.
Right? And so sometimes just that freedom to just emote.
That's right.
And then allow those around you to care about you, to care for you.
That's right.
Is important. But again, to that point, it's just men don't have that freedom. Maybe we do, but we don't feel like we're allowed to have it.
So you started off behind the scenes. You mentioned to us that you've been here for 22 years at the agency. What have you found to be helpful for you?
What's been helpful for me has been the building, has been the people in the building, because every day is different, and the different day that we experience is only understood by another social worker, another DCF worker. So as far as this work is concerned, I need my people. So I've been able to function, at DCF or in life, period, through the relationships that I built at work. And so, we spend so much time at our jobs in whatever discipline we're in, but it's not hard to find a cohort of individuals that you find safety with. I think COVID and the virtual work has kind of stripped that away from the workers themselves, because it's just hard to find someone else. Another DCF worker is a perfect septic tank for the stuff that you need to deposit at the end of the day. Right. Another worker. Right. So now I think we go home with some of this stuff. But aside from that, finding time to work out, and finding time to just, really dig deep into my own interests. But that's also a struggle too, because you got to, like I said, you got to find time to do it. And I think what us in the helping field usually do is put ourselves last. We keep meeting the needs of others. And although you might have a plan for self-care, now that's where it takes self-love to really put that into action, building boundaries and all of that. And so I'm learning a lot of that stuff now, because I've, kind of grew up being a person who had to take care of everybody else's burdens and make sure that I'm not a burden on anyone else. A lot of us grew up like that. And I think all that does is teaches you how to not take care of yourself, ultimately. But to answer your question, finding things like working out, my hobbies, and just having people. I think people are the biggest asset, to find some people around you that you could just talk to and feel understood.
Have you been able to find that man circle to kind of support you, either inside of work or outside?
Yeah, I'm actually actively building it. Because part of that too is knowing yourself. So you got to know you. You got to know what you can bring to that circle too. So there's reciprocity. But that's what I'm doing. I'm actively looking for individuals who want to sit down and talk like girls.
What does that mean?
It is very, very therapeutic to release and talk.
No, I know.
I like it, Carlos. I like that. Yeah. I love you said so beautifully. Self-care requires self-love. And that hit me. And I think that's beautifully said. Because like you said, we take care of everybody else. But how do we stop for a moment? And then it reminds me of what Dr. Black said earlier. Our first podcast guest talked about filling our well. And then we talked about strategies with Dr. Cooper about, what are some opportunities we can lean into. But that to me is actually self-love is doing the action. Because people always talk about love, it doesn't mean anything. Words are just words. And yet actions are what drive the genuine act.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and again, women are guilty just as much. So I'm not at all. But I appreciate lifting up how we continue to lift up and support our men in DCF. And that matters, because what we see on a regular, or what staff see on a regular, it's not normal, right, compared to other industries or other jobs. So in that same regards, it shouldn't be the same kind of standards that everybody else has as we continue to elevate and opportunities to better wrap our
Sure, absolutely. Whatever we could do. There's many different initiatives that we've taken on at DCF that are related to the work because of just life, humanity, the racial justice, fatherhood, even the wellness teams that we have in all our different offices. We've put a lot of thought into the work that we do, and I think this is a great initiative to also pour into. The stats is only 10% of the workforce are men in child protection or social work as a whole. So I'm not saying that those individuals are that stat creates a situation where 10% are the ignored. I just think that the work has to get done, and people's emotional needs and stresses and all of that overall get pushed to the side.
That's right.
But today we can specifically speak about men, because I think there's a different angle to which we could reach men that's not traditional.
That's right.
But it takes other men. I think that's the thing. It takes other men to reach other men.
Agreed. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
So there's something that the agency could do to help to further support the men that work here. What would you say that would be?
Wow. That's a good question. I think, having a men's health initiative, a focus group that can focus on those strategies, sort of having open forum, open discussion to see, one, what are the issues that, men feel like they're facing specifically, right? And then from that, develop some strategies to bring men together, even if it's just to talk about what those things are. Because I think sometimes just being able to feel like you're heard, is important. And I think things organically grow from there as long as there's genuine intention.
That's right.
And the individuals that are, together are also, authentic in their expression. I think, things can grow from there.
I also hear the word consistency, too. To your point, those who will, every day is different, like you said so beautifully. So every day is going to bring a different level of support or a different level of, hey, I'm going to need to take off my cape for a moment and just be me. And so that, I think, is beautiful that you've said to create that platform or that opportunity. So well said.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm thinking this way is because I traditionally speaking, go get some therapy. Go see somebody, go talk to somebody. So I've done that. And so in one of my intakes, a therapist said, we got to make sure we match you with a male therapist because you got man problems, which I thought was interesting for that to be assessed because the individual that was doing the intake felt like, the stuff that I was sharing with him would relate more to a male therapist. So when I heard that, because I thought therapy was therapy, using tools and all of the knowledge and all of that. But that particular therapist felt like, you should probably specifically ask for a male therapist. So that got me to thinking that, some of these issues are specific to gender culturally because of how we've been raised, not biologically, but just because of how, we've lived this world and been, taught to think.
It's powerful, extremely powerful in the sense that when I think about bringing it internal to what our male staff need here at the agency, but then how can that be modeled? You mentioned the fatherhood initiative or work that's been going on for some time, but how is that modeled to then our dads out there? They're having concerns and issues as well, maybe even compounded by the fact that we're involved in their life. So how do we help those dads?
Well, I'm one of those dads. And I realized that when I went through my divorce recently, because it's different to do, I was able to do fatherhood initiative work from the perspective of an intact family. I was the dad that was home and working with dads that are not home. A lot of my recent struggle emotionally and mentally has been related to redeveloping that identity as a man, because now I'm no longer dad at home. I'm dad outside of the home. So, and that's me, the DCF worker, right? With this degree and all of these tools. And that's still hard for me to manage. There's a lot of emotions and feelings and thoughts that come just from that dynamic alone. So that made me identify 100% with the dads that are not at home with their families and the struggles that they have with the gatekeepers of the home now. Made me realize that a lot of those issues are not just, in isolation outside of the DCF office. This is stuff that we deal with. DCF workers get divorced. DCF workers have all kinds of issues. And, but we're trained to deal with other people's issues and kind of like not our own. So that opened my eyes a whole lot to even the fatherhood initiative and how, there's a lot of sensitivity that has to go into understanding why the dad is moving the way he's moving. I go to a lot of homes and the moms don't want the dads to be part of the home. And that's part of the reason why we do our fatherhood initiative. But there's a lot of rejection that these dads are dealing with that, some of it is not their fault. It's just the dynamic of the situation they're in. So to get some of that rejection also sometimes from the department, it's almost like a double jeopardy. So, understanding men's needs from a mental health and an emotional perspective, I think will definitely help us engage our fathers as well as we move forward.
Nice. Well, we are lucky to have you as one of the champions to help lift up and move in a direction that allows our DCF men and our fathers out there to be able to feel seen. And also, I love that you said it so beautifully. We live life, right? Life happens to us as workers. And how do you walk through it, manage that as we help others, right? And that's the beauty of what I heard you say about, as I'm growing and learning and being stretched, but what I heard you say is you're able to apply that to our kids and families. You're able to then have a different understanding and a lens in which that sees them differently. And that's an opportunity there too, that you are able to provide in your pain or in different openings that are what it is. But I think there's beauty in that too. So I appreciate you just sharing and being vulnerable here with us.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me and allowing me to open up.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
So any final thoughts, ideas that you would give to our listeners, especially our male listeners?
Just be encouraged, man. This is the beginning, I think, of something that's awesome. I feel it in my spirit, and I think that's why we're collectively here together to talk about it. I think men definitely need to, step up, but not in the way that we've been challenged to step up. It's not about being stronger. It's not about having more money. It's about, being more authentic, being genuine, being open, and starting to live from the inside out, and I think that if, we can bring men together, it doesn't have to be a whole bunch, but, we could bring some men together to start talking about these topics and find ways that, they can affect the areas that they're in. I think we can do some great things, not just at DCF, but I think, in the world, because men are everywhere and women are too. And as long, and these issues that I'm talking about help me to relate to the rest of the world. So it's not just me dealing with me, but then it also trickles out into the world and how I deal with everybody else. So a better me is it's a better world for everybody else.
Amen. For all of us. For all of us. All of us.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. I definitely think we're onto something here, for sure. And I just appreciate you taking the time.
No problem.
Genuinely.
No, I'm excited. I'm glad to be here, and I'm humbled at the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Real Talk.